The lore and storyline of TF2 runs deep. Trust me, I have a theoretical degree on this subject. Everyone already knows the basic stuff such as Redmond and Plutarch, Manco and MVM, but few people know about the full set of events within the world of Team Fortress, like when old Nick discovered the South Pole, or when Erasmus was born, and other meaningless and pointless facts that doesn't matter at all. So guess what we're doing? That's right, we're gonna document each and every single notable event within the world of TF2. We begin with the birth of Merasmus the Wizard. Although a specific birth date isn't known, he claims to have been around for 6,000 years in 1972, meaning he was born at the dawn of the earliest known civilization, specifically Sumer, placing us at 4000 BCE. We now jump ahead massively to the year 1680. Ancestors of the demo start producing the Groot rum, which would later be seen in the Scottish Handshake. January 26, 1788 marks the exact date Australia was founded, both in the real world and in the world of Team Fortress 2. Among those colonizers was Old Nick, who tried to settle for the sun and heat for nearly a year before sailing away on a boat to the South Pole on December 18, 1788. From every year onward, he returns to Australia on the 18th to kidnap naughty children who work for him for the rest of the year, making gifts for him. In 1792, an Italian physicist named Alessandro Volta makes the first battery, with zinc, ammonium chloride, and molten salt mixed together. This formula would later go on to be used in Bonk Atomic Punch nearly a century and a half later. Demo's other favorite spirit maker shows up and starts distilling in 1808, shown via the stock model here. 1814. Hats are solidified in the world of TF2 as a status of class and nobility, introducing both the Gentleman of Leisure, his companion, and Smelly Unfortunate, in addition to the first reference of the Gentleman's Monthly newspaper. Our first real connection to the main story of TF2, the administrator or possibly one of her descendants starts to plan to collect and gather Australium, according to both Grey, Man, and Darling, sometime in 1822. In the same year, on September 2nd, the Mann triplets, Redmond, Plutarch, and Grey, are born in Mann Manor, London. Their mother, Betty Mann, dies as a result of the pregnancy. Zephaniah Mann overlooks his children and orders the hideously disgruntled Grey to be smothered. Luckily or unluckily, however, he's saved by an eagle during the Great Eagle Scourged, and is raised in its nest. Claude Huggins found the town of Hugginsville at the corpse of his bare-mauled wife. Too scared and meek to leave, however, he's bullied by a pack of wandering teens to change the name to Two Farts. When they leave him, he's too scared of them to change the name fully back, and as a result names the town Two Fort in 1847. 1849, Zephaniah Mann, along with Redmond and Plutarch, make their way to America to view the vast lands of gravel he thought to have purchased, only to discover it was fool's gravel, otherwise known as sand. Grey Man, now 27 years old, resurfaces after killing his Eagle family and building Grey Gravel Co., and starts to blackmail Zephaniah Mann for his cache of miracle gravel, or as we know it, Australium. Said Australium he possessed was dug up on an expedition trip of Barnabas Hale, Saxon Hale's grandfather, to Australia. 1 year later, Zephaniah Mann kicks the bucket and loses his fight, battling every disease known to man. On his will, he leaves the following. The useless barren land that he bought in America, he gives to his two idiotic sons so they would fight over it forever. This immediately results in the gravel war to break out, and the first team of red and blue mercs consisting of Abraham Lincoln, Nikolai Tesla, Sigmund Freud, and other historical figures are formed. Mann and Sons Munition Concern, otherwise known by its more modern name, Manco, is left to his tracker and aide, Barnabas Hale. And finally, his estate, fortune, property, and Australium to Elizabeth, or the administrator for safekeeping. Australia is now recognized as the most advanced civilization in the world, with technologies such as invisibility, teleportation, and flight. Despite the administrator or Elizabeth knowing of Australium since 1822, the scientific capabilities of Australium are only recently discovered in 1850. Abraham Lincoln invents the stairs in 1857 and persists to give me a headache with his retcons. 1861, August 21st, specifically a Wednesday, both Redmond and Plutarch sell their gravel mines for 5 cents to Barnabas Hale, who makes some coal mines, thus creating a promising job opportunity for the local community of Two Fort. This mine would eventually become Coal Town in game. Also, Merasmus sells a hat tonic out of the Scottish Drug Company at this time. 1862, August 5th. Australian scientists convince the world that there is no gold in Australia and go to Canada instead. This caused the Klondike Gold Rush in the Yukon. This entire segment is a bit confusing when looking at other facts actually, and maybe entirely retconned. Abraham Lincoln makes his second inaugural speech and cites his love for the arena game mode in 1865. Only to get assassinated by John Wilkes Tower of Hats Booth on April 15th. Stricken by a grief for patriotism, Radian Conager, the engineer's grandfather, makes several blueprints of things that would have saved his life, including a top hat with a gun in it, a teleporter, and the unused building The Repair Node, among other inventions. 5 days later, on April 20th, the wanted posters for John Wilkes Booth are produced. The administrator, or one of her ancestors, starts to actively go out and collect as much Australium as possible in 1880, eventually amassing over 100 pounds of it by 1890. Also in 1890, Radian Conager returns from a meeting with Plutarch, who wants him to construct a life-extending machine. At his workshop, however, is the administrator, or an ancestor, who convinces Radigan to build an additional 2 other life-extending machines. One for Redmond, and another for an unknown party. 4 years later, Radigan finishes his first life-extending machine for Plutarch on July 17th. A month later, on August 3rd, he completes Redmond's. He completes the final life-extending machine on April 14th, although an exact year isn't known. At this current point of time, the Mann triplets are 72 years old. The dawn of the 20th century. In and around this time, Bilious Hale, Saxon Hale's dad, takes over Manco and kills John Wilkes' Tower of Hats Booth, bravely sitting on him while others take pot shots at his body. As a reward for his courage, he is given his hat. In addition, Manco also invents the robot on January 23rd, 1900, with promises that this automaton will do nothing but violence. Australia has also promised to colonize space by this point in time, although the fact that Poopy Joe is referenced here, which is an event that happens in 70 years, makes this really confusing. June 15th, 1907, Manco receives the award for the safest place to work in the Badlands, against all common sense. January 24th, 1910 is when Manco gets full rights to supply the weapons for both Red and Blue. This development continues throughout the years. August 15th, 1915, Bilious Hale and some coal miners are trapped during a cave-in. Luckily, Bilious Hale escapes by punching his way out. 14 miners die as a result of both the cave-in and his punching. 1921 sees Franklin D. Roosevelt lose both of his legs rocket jumping. As a result, he looks at Lincoln's plan for the stairs and perfects them. This is also the year where Bilious Hale tries to keep everyone's attention on coal by introducing the first ever steam-powered hat. This attempt fails, however, and a year later in 1922, Bilious Hale is forced to close up his coal mine and munitions factory, but preserves it as a museum, also in case if it's ever needed again. Manco builds a new facility elsewhere and gets into the hat business fully. In or around the year of 1925, the Demo Man at the age of 6 accidentally kills his parents while trying to explode the Loch Ness Monster. He's sent to the Crypt Grammar School for Orphans. Word of his explosions rang out and his real parents revealed themselves, informing them of the long tradition of Highland Demo Man. A year later, on October 31st, the Demo Man at the age of 7 gets a job working for Erasmus in his castle. The wizard warns the boy to not gaze upon the Balmanomicon. He does just that, and as a result loses his eye and inadvertently creates Monoculus. 1930, the events of Team Fortress Classic take place. Redmond and Plutarch hire the Team Fortress Classic mercs to fight one another, supplied by Bilious Hale and Manco. 1932, Philippus Bonk adds sugar to the ingredients of the battery, making and soon branding Bonk Atomic Punch. New Zealand sees the bottom of the ocean thanks to Bill Bell warning them about the world being covered in magma. That obviously didn't happen. September 1st, 1939. World War II breaks out and soldier enlists to every branch of the American military, only to be denied. In response, he buys a ticket to Poland on his own terms, trains himself to kill Nazis, and embarks on his quest, awarding himself the medals he himself created. Heavy's father, a counter-revolutionary, is killed, resulting in Heavy and his family to be sent to a northern Siberian gulag in September of 1941. 3 months later in December, Heavy and his family escape and the gulag is burnt to the ground, with all the guards tortured to death, most likely due to the Heavy. 1942, after a meeting to persuade New Zealand to ascend to the stars fails, Bill Bell states that he's going to use his rocket to escape the cataclysm before it hits the Earth. This eventually causes his baby son, the Sniper, to accidentally crawl into the rocket, breaking the glass dome that separated the ocean from New Zealand and causing it to be flooded. Luckily though, Sniper lands in Australia and is adopted by Mr. and Mrs. Mundy. Scout is born in 1945, according to Spy 27 years later. Despite World War II ending in 1945, Soldier continues killing people in Poland until 1949, a full decade of murder and war crimes. 1957. Saxon Hale, while fighting panthers with mags, has his dreams of killing said panthers ruined by his former mentor Charles Darling, who takes them away to his animal dungeon, also known as a zoo. Saxon Hale also becomes the CEO of Manco here a year or two later. It's not really shown. 1960 sees the first issue of the Saxon Hale comics to be produced. These comics would see a lot of different series and issues published throughout the years, but I've just generalized them all to this one specific date. 1962, Margaret's first husband's funeral is held, when suddenly, giant snapping turtle. Two Fort's Mayor Mike forces Trevor to become an Italian stereotype, calling him Giuseppe, and the demo's body has fully adapted to get all its nutrients from alcohol. The current day engineer is contracted to construct a sentry gun, teleporters, dispensers, and other weapons and gear of his arsenal while using notes from his grandfather Radigan Conager in the year of 1965. One could also raise the question of this is when the engineer starts personally working with the administrator. Saxon Hale opens up Camp Saxon in 1968. It closes shortly after. The events of Team Fortress 2 take place officially in 1968. Red and Blue fight one another as instructed by their bosses Redman and Blutarch, still feuding even at the age of 146. Saxon Hale, the CEO of Manco, sells them weapons to fight each other with, and Miss Pauling and the administrator coordinate and orchestrate it all from behind the curtain. Now get ready for just a whole trainload of events because all the comics and updates just join up over here. Manco wins the bid for America's monkey-knot program for $1. They plan to launch Poopy Joe into a rocket to compete with the Soviets' Vladimir Bananas. This rocket is sabotaged by the administrator who switches the fuel load of Australium with gravel. The Red Demo and Blue Soldier form a friendship, jeopardizing the plans of the administrator. She calls Saxon Hale, who has some weapons with ties to Poopy Joe, and gives them to her so the two mercs can compete with one another. Meet the Spy also happens like 10 seconds before the administrator finds out about the friendship. Manco denies any involvement with the monkey's death, even when pressed about it during a Senate hearing. Blutarch requests that the engineer rebuilds his life-extending machine, digging up Radigan Conager's grave to supply him the notes of it. The engineer also discovers notes about the Wrangler, Southern Hospitality, Frontier Justice, and the Gunslinger, and proceeds to construct them. The administrator hires a director to film the Red Mercenaries to keep tabs on them. This is where most of the Meet the Team videos come from. The director is then murdered by Miss Pauling to tie up loose ends. The first Halloween for the Mercs, Marasmus crashes their Christmas party and summons Monoculus to fight the Mercs. Soldier ingests some of Marasmus' Kill Me Come Back Stronger pills, all in the year 1968. August 1969. Saxon Hale firebombs Woodstock from his helicopter because fuck hippies. Halloween 1969. Marasmus, returning from WizardCon, finds out that Soldier has transformed his castle to a raccoon sanctuary. Angry about it, he fights the mercenaries once again. Next Halloween, year 1970, Marasmus loans $12,000 from the Japanese mafia to build an evil carnival to appease the ancient Sumerian clown god Bozo. Unfortunately, however, he forgot to build it on a burial ground and enlists some mercenaries to help him with that. 1971, keep up, we're still going. Some genealogy microfiche records are destroyed in a fire in the Two Fort Library for no reason, leaving only paper records. The Saxon Hale comics end their publication. The SFM film expiration date happens around this time. Redman and Blutarch rent the Alamo out under the pretense of a peace treaty, resulting the two in agreeing that they need a heir, which ends up in male pregnancy somehow. Turns out Greyman set up this meeting and kills the both of them. After 149 years, the Gravel War is officially over. Except now the two brothers are arguing over who died first. Redman was technically stabbed by Greyman first, but argues that he was still bleeding out when Blutarch died. So they call Soldier, who informs them that technically neither one of them is dead, but simply a ghost, and as a result, whoever passes on to hell first is the true winner of the Gravel War. So the two call up their mercenaries to do just that, giving us Hell Tower. Literally the next day after the murder of both Redman and Blutarch, Saxon Hale, disguised as a hippie, sneaks into a Yeti sanctuary to fight and capture the last Yeti alive. Saxon Hale then decides, while simultaneously fighting the Yeti, to actually address Greyman slowly marching towards all Manco facilities. He rehires the mercenaries to fight and defend Manco, and the robot war has now begun. When the mercenaries defend Medic's hometown of Strattenburg, he perfects the medicine of reanimation and male pregnancy. Erasmus knocks on the door of the mercenaries and tells them that he needs their help to fill a gargoyle with souls to repay money he borrowed from the Russian mob. Ditching their board game of gargoyles and gravel, the mercs agree and fight once again on Halloween while also mucking around with the timeline apparently. Soldier infiltrates Grey Gravel Co. by dressing up as a cardboard robot and relays important information on when and where the robots are going to attack next. Heavy and Miss Pauling also attend one of these infiltration missions where they witness a new engineer robot being unveiled. Saxon Hale murders the Yeti he captured before in Yeti Park, renames Park to Mercenary Park. More news at 10. 1972. Jesus Christ, that's a lot for 1971. Grey Man, unable to beat Saxon Hale, surrenders and invokes the Manco Challenge to Hale, a one-on-one where the winner is the CEO of Manco. Grey Man says his daughter Olivia Man is the challenger. Saxon Hale, unable to fight a child, surrenders and Grey Man is now the CEO of Manco and the robot war is officially over. From this point on, the TF comics take place and the race for the last cache of Australium begins. The administrator, hearing about Grey Man taking over Manco, instructs Miss Pauling to go into hiding for a bit. The mercs are also immediately fired by Grey Man. Soldier is evicted from his raccoon sanctuary and is forced to give tours of Star's homes as a replacement job. Scout, who helped carry Soldier's stuff, breaks both his arms and pleads Spy to drive him to the Two-Fort Bank to get his life savings. The two go to the bank but get trapped inside the vault and arrested. Cut forward to 6 months later. Miss Pauling is instructed by the administrator to reassemble the team. She finds Soldier in Hollywood standing over the corpse of the next Snap Tom Jones, who then blames the murder on Erasmus and is then arrested. Miss Pauling also picks up Pyro and Demoman along the way. Meanwhile, Grey Man and Olivia Man find Manco's secret Australian vault but discover it was completely taken by the administrator. Grey Man hires Team Fortress Classic to pursue the administrator in the last bit of Australium. Among their ranks is the medic, who has perfected the art of reanimation and male pregnancy. The medic also artificially attaches their souls to his and puts baboon uteruses in them. Also, meanwhile, Saxon Hale is released from prison for burning down Charles Darling's zoo. Mags picks him up and the two go to meet Darling, who has a plan to get Saxon Hale's company back in exchange for Australium, planning to use it to extend the lives of his nearly extinct animals. Miss Pauling and the other mercenaries arrive in Two-Fort. Soldier and Demo attempt to save Scout and Spy from their trial but expose themselves, resulting in the four of them to be hanged. Miss Pauling has a secret meeting with the administrator, who tells her to go to the last cache of Australium in New Zealand. Pauling, along with Pyro, goes to the Two-Fort Library, is informed about the burned genealogy records, and burns the last paper trail of the administrator. Miss Pauling then shows up to the gallows and saves the mercenaries by telling Mayor Mike what a mayor can actually legally do. A week later, Scout, Soldier, and Pyro go to Russia to find and recruit the Heavy, who joins the team along with Heavy's sister Zahana. The rest of Heavy's family moves to America. The entire team then plans to meet up in Australia. At the same time, Grey Man and Olivia Man arrive in Two-Fort and find out about Miss Pauling burning the records a week prior. The entire team arrives in Australia. Heavy and Scout go to the fake Uluru Rock and discover the secret Australian mine there has dried out. They also discover Mags and Saxon Hale there as well. Later that day, Spy, along with Soldier and Zahana, are tasked with securing a submarine from the Australians, discovering that their powers have been drained as well. At the same time, Miss Pauling and Demo track down Sniper in his home, who ties up the duo and questions where his real birth parents are. Miss Pauling says they're going to meet them right now when Sniper joins the team. Pyro just doesn't exist anywhere during these events, apparently. The team, save for Scout and Heavy, go down to the depths of New Zealand. Sniper meets his birth parents and his mother, Larnar, finding out that the world wasn't covered by magma and that her idiot husband built a useless rocket out of Australium, uses said rocket to blast to the stars, flooding the last remaining bit of New Zealand and sending the last bit of Australium to orbit. Sniper's father, Bill Bell, steals the submarine the teen had and escapes New Zealand. Suddenly, the Team Fortress Classic mercs show up on the scene, shoot and kill Sniper, and capture the rest of them for interrogation. Back at Grey Man's island base, the Team Fortress 2 team is tortured and interrogated. The Classic Heavy talks to Grey Man and betrays him, learning the secret of Australium. Soldier is being interrogated by the Classic Pyro, who is then killed by Zahana. Meanwhile, in a different cell, the Classic Spy tricks Miss Pauling into where the administrator was supposed to meet the team. The coordinates appear to line up at the Empire State Building. The Classic Demo walks in and both he and the Classic Spy are killed when Soldier and Zahana show up to rescue everyone else. Grey Man, after informing Miss Pauling just what the administrator is truly capable of, dies. The last man triplet is dead at the ripe age of 150. Medic reanimates Sniper, much to the dismay of the Classic Heavy. The Classic Heavy uses Grey Man's blood-sucking robots to attack the escaped mercenaries. Miss Pauling then dies as a result. She's shortly resurrected by the medic, however. Meanwhile, the blood-sucking robots have contracted alcohol poisoning while attempting to suck out Demo's blood, whose body is now a full-functioning distillery. Scout and Heavy finally join the battle with Saxon Hale, Mags, Jerry, and Guns from Manco shortly behind them, after an hour of catching up and talking about the glory days. The classic sniper, about to headshot the Heavy, gets interrupted by the Spy, whose identity is soon found out by the classic sniper's shoddy wall hacks. The classic sniper shoots Spy in the leg and starts monologuing, only to be killed by Sniper. Medic stitches up Demo and explains how Monoculus keeps reappearing. Demo leaves and Medic is confronted by the classic Heavy, who orders him to attach a life-extending machine to him, or rather to instruct his guy on how to do it. Medic objects and attacks Classic Heavy, who fights back. Heavy confronts Classic Heavy and requests him to fight him in a fair fight. The Classic Heavy agrees, killing Medic, making it a one-on-one. Heavy then loses his fucking shit and decimates Classic Heavy into the absolute fucking ground. Meanwhile, Pyro, hiding in the rafters, sets fire to the Classic Soldier and Classic Scout while Scout and Miss Pauling watch the Hana and Soldier fight nude, covered in honey. Saxon Hale and Mags fight robots as a team while Scout leaves to fight somewhere less naked. Scout, now alone, starts to get overwhelmed by the robots, barely fighting them off. Sniper and Spy come across him bleeding out. Spy admits the truth about who Scout's father really is. Kinda. Scout then dies in the arms of his father at the age of 27, only to go to heaven and to be revived by God himself. Miss Pauling gets a phone call from the engineer who's been working with the administrator trying to extend her life to the limits of what's possible. Miss Pauling informs Engineer that the last bit of Australium has left the planet. Snap back to the Heavy fight. Classic Heavy, clearly underestimating Heavy's strength, plugs in Grey Man's life-extending machine to his spine and begins to throw Heavy into the ground. Meanwhile in Hell, Medic and the Devil have a little heart-to-heart. The Medic informs the Devil he's surgically added 8 more souls to him and as a result can go back to Earth. Medic bluffs the Classic Heavy into thinking the pen he's carrying is capable of giving him birth to 3 or 4 baby baboons. Heavy rips the life-extending machine out of Classic Heavy, who then perishes and bleeds out, and gives birth to 1 baby baboon, thanks to Medic. Miss Pauling and the rest of the mercenaries stand over the defeated Classic Heavy in triumph. Unbeknownst to them, however, the administrator, now hooked up to the Mark V life-extending machine thanks to the engineer, used the last vial of Australium on the planet, giving her only an hour left to live to carry out her plan. More than enough time to end this. And thus draws the end of the current TF comics, until we hopefully get that last one, because that's gonna happen any time now. But don't feel too bad about that, because the events of TF2 actually continue past this point in time. School in Two Fort starts back up again, despite being closed for 6 years in 1978, thanks to Pyro burning all the textbooks in the Two Fort library. December 4th, 1987, Jeremy, aka Scout, dies according to God himself at the age of 42. 2022. Hey, that's next year. Two Fort's license for the federal pedophile sanctuary expires according to Miss Pauling and Unhappy Returns. Sniper, accidentally signing away his likeness rights to Saxon Hale under the idea that his niece was pledging him for a charity walk, finally gets his ownership rights back in the far off year of 7039. Jesus. And that's the completed timeline. All canonical events within Team Fortress 2 marked and dated to the T. More or less with some guesswork here and there. There are some things that I missed that I couldn't quite place within this series of events, such as Meet the Medic, but those outliers are few and not many. If you still have some interest in TF2 with the nonsense and humor of it, I suggest checking out this other video which details all the characters on the Naked and the Dead comic cover, and who they are exactly. We got lamp lawyers and 2 guys named Giuseppe on it and shitty fucking submariners. Thanks for sitting through all this, unless you're skipping ahead right now just to get to the end. Expect another TF2 video shortly, and most importantly, thank God himself we did not collapse on March 15th, 8 PM EST. I was really worried about the anime sexuals. That's not a thing. You can't just claim that's a fucking thing.